Alright then, it is time for more empathy with Chapter 17, Intervention. Let's go, everyone. No beating around. The morning sun filtered in gently through the window of Riley's bedroom, casting the room in a pleasant glow. Riley sat on her bed, dressed for school, daydreaming as she glanced around her room with a smile on her face. "It's good to have you back, Riley," Joy's voice whispered inside her mind. "It's good to be back," Riley muttered back. "Riley!" Her mother's voice came drifting up from the kitchen. "Come down for breakfast or you'll be late for school." "Coming," Riley called, hopping off her bed and picking her backpack up off the floor, before exiting her room and making her way downstairs. As she entered the kitchen, she found her mother placing her breakfast onto the table, while her father was just finishing his. "Morning, monkey," Bill greeted Riley through a mouthful of food as he stood up from his chair and brought his plate over to the sink. "Morning," Riley replied as she sat down in her chair, her eyes widening in surprise at the sight of her breakfast. "Wow, pancakes, Mom? On a Wednesday?" "Pancakes sound really delicious now." "Well, I thought, after yesterday," Jill paused, biting her lip while taking a deep breath, prompting Bill to wrap his arm around her waist and pull her into a comforting one-armed hug. "What your mother was trying to say is we were worried about you, Riley," Bill explained, setting his fork down as Jill placed her hand on his shoulder. After how you reacted to everything that happened, after you turned in on yourself like that, we thought we might have lost you." Riley paused behind her chair for a moment, resting her hands on its wooden back as she looked at her parents and felt the emotions radiating off of them. A sense of joy and relief, but beneath that, she could also sense a core of fear. After a moment, she realized what the fear represented. "Poor Mom and Dad," a sadness muttered in Riley's head. "And you're worried you might still lose me," Riley stated, walking around the chair and sitting in it as she spoke. "You're worried I might turn in on myself again." Jill and Bill blinked in surprise before sharing a confused glance. "That's very perceptive of you, Riley," Jill commented. "It wasn't too hard to guess," Riley half lied with a shrug. "You're right," Bill confirmed. "What happened to you, it was so sudden and unexpected. We're just worried it could happen again." "It won't happen again, as long as Riley has her friends." "So am I," Riley agreed, causing her parents to blink in surprise at her for a moment. "I mean, I feel better, but not fully. I'm worried that if something like that happens again, I'll be right back there. I think I can pull myself out again if it happens, but I'd rather not go back there if I can help it." "That's very mature of you, Riley," Jill observed with a smile. "Your mother and I thought it might be best if you kept seeing the grief counselor," Bill stated. I think this is a good idea," Riley replied with a small nod. I'd like to get the chance to actually talk to her." "That's an excellent idea," Jill agreed, her smile growing. Bill smiled as well before sucking in a breath as he glanced at the clock. "I gotta get to work," Bill announced as he stuffed the remainder of his breakfast into his mouth and washed it down with a swig of coffee. "Have a good day, monkey," Bill said, kissing Riley on the top of her head as he passed. "You too," Riley replied with a smile, turning to watch her father go. Turning back towards her mother, Riley found Jill just watching her, a smile on her face, but tears welling up in her eyes. "Oh no, what's wrong?" Sanders questioned. Mom? Riley questioned with concern, sensing a strange mixture of happiness and sadness radiating off of Jill. Is there something wrong? Nothing. It's just... Jill paused for a second to collect herself. I was so worried about you, Riley. If it wasn't for your father and your friends... My friends? Riley questioned in confusion. Your friends were very supportive of you while you were gone, Jill explained. I'm actually fairly certain one of them paid for your therapy. Really? Riley inquired as she blinked in surprise. Who? I'm not sure. Jill replied with a shrug before she smiled at Riley. The important thing is that you know how wonderful your friends are. Trust me, Mom, Riley replied, giving her mother a warm smile as she spoke. I know. I wish I had friends like that. I do have friends at college, of course. But I'd like them to meet them. You know, my friends meeting Riley's friends. That'd be cool. Well, you better hurry up and finish your breakfast then, Jill stated with a smile of her own. You don't want to keep Tip waiting when she comes over to walk to school. Right, Riley agreed, her smile growing as she began to wolf down the rest of her breakfast. Later. The afternoon sun was already hanging low over San Francisco as Riley and Tip made their way home from school. And then I laughed so hard that the milk came out of my nose, Riley said, giggling as she spoke and earning a fresh bout of laughter from Tip. That's so gross! Tip laughed as she wiped mirthful tears from her eyes. I thought it only happened in cartoons. Well, I could personally attest to it, Riley replied as Tip's laughter began to subside. I've missed this, Tip stated as she slung her arm over Riley's shoulder. Same, Riley replied as she mimicked the action while falling into step with Tip, her expression falling slightly as they walked. Though there's still something missing. Hiro, Tip guessed with a sigh. Has really no one been able to talk to him? Riley questioned. He stays in his room all day and doesn't talk to anyone, Tip replied with a shake of her head. Even Cass is barely able to get more than 2 words out of him on any given day. Seriously? Anger questioned with annoyance. Things just... They can't go on like this. Riley sighed with annoyance. I can feel him, you know? Even when I'm not around him, even when I was checked out, I could still sense all that blackness eating away at him. Blackness? Tip questioned. I don't think I follow. It's basically how I sense depression, Riley explained, looking worriedly at Tip. If we don't do something, it will eat him from the inside. Oh, great, so now we're going Kingdom Hearts with the darkness, aren't we? I don't need to make a Kingdom Hearts reference here, do I? But what can we do? Tip questioned. It's not like you can pull it out of his head or something. Well, we have to do something, Riley said resolutely as she began purposefully walking down the street. That's the spirit, Joyce said encouragingly. Where are you going? Tip questioned as she hurried to catch up with Riley. Where else? Riley asked in reply before continuing on her way, Tip following along behind her. She said that she was going to go to the Lucky Cat Cafe at the end of the last chapter, and she means it. The problem is, I've just realized this. I never really brought this up originally when I recorded this chapter, but O was last seen in the last chapter looking at a slushy machine, and we haven't seen him since then. I don't think this is going to get brought up again, is it? Soon enough, Tip and Riley were standing outside the entrance to the Lucky Cat Cafe. The 2 girls paused for a moment at its entrance, before Riley squared her shoulders and entered the building, the bell over the door announcing her arrival. "Hello, welcome to..." Cass began to say as she looked up from the counter before she stopped as she noticed who had entered. "Riley!" Riley smiled as Cass hurried out from behind the counter and pulled the girl into a hug. "It's so good to see you!" Cass squealed as she pulled away from Riley and looked down at the girl. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Riley replied with a shrug. "What about you?" "Me?" Cass asked, clearly surprised by the question. "I'm fine." Even as Cass spoke, Riley knew the woman was lying to her, sensing the sadness and fear she was trying to push down. "Cass," Riley said soberly, "I know you're not. I can tell you're hurting from what's been going with Hiro, and with what happened to Tadashi." Cass stiffened at Riley's observation before her smile turned sad. "The sound of a bike has punctured the moment. I do apologize, tra-la-la-la-la." "You're an insightful young lady," Cass observed. "Did you know that?" Riley shrugged in reply as she looked down at the floor. "Something like that," Joy commented with a snort of amusement. "Did you both come here to help Hiro?" Cass questioned as she glanced between Riley and Tip. "And you," Riley stated as she glanced down at her feet. Smiling, Cass reached down and cupped Riley's cheek, causing the girl to look up at her. "That's very sweet of both of you," Cass stated before she sighed sadly, and her smile fell away. "I'm not sure how much either of you will be able to help, though. Hiro doesn't seem interested in talking with anyone anymore." "It can't hurt to try," Riley stated with a small shrug. "And we can't let him spend the rest of his life locked up in his room," Tip added resolutely. "Well, then who am I to stop you?" Cass questioned as she gestured towards the staircase that led up to the apartment above. "Good luck." The girls nodded in reply before they made their way up the stairs. Passing through the first floor, Tip and Riley paused at the foot of the stairs that they both knew led up to the room that Hiro had once shared with his brother. "Are you ready for this?" Tip questioned as she looked over at Riley. Riley paused as she looked up at the stairs, a nervous expression flashing across her face. "What if this doesn't work?" Fear whispered in her head. "What if we just make him angry at us?" "We have to try," Joy replied. "We can't just let him stay there forever." Squaring her shoulders, Riley nodded at Tip before she began to make her way up the stairs. Walking up the stairs, Tip and Riley found the room almost completely dark, illuminated only by what little light that the Venetian blinds over the windows allowed through. Quickly scanning the room, Riley managed to spot Hiro sitting in the red beanbag chair that lay on the floor near his bed. Hiro looked up at the girls as they made their way to the top of the stairs, his eyes widening in surprise as he saw them. "Riley? Tip?" Hiro questioned as he sat up straight. "What are you guys doing here?" "Geez, why do you think?" Disgust snarked. "We came to check up on you," Riley began as she and Tip walked into the room, a hesitant smile on her face. "We wanted to know how you were feeling." "Oh," Hiro replied, his previous surprise fading away to form an emotionless mask. "I'm fine." "Yeah, sure," Tip snorted as she gave Hiro a level look. "Like we're going to believe that." Riley gave Tip a look of her own as she walked over to one of the windows and opened the blinds, allowing some light to filter into the room. As she did, she noticed a plate of untouched food sitting on Hiro's desk. kind of food was it? In the movie, it looks like a roast steak. I think it was roast steak. I get why he wouldn't be really feeling that hungry after. Yeah. Have you eaten anything recently, Hiro? Riley questioned as she gave the young man a concerned look. I haven't had much of an appetite lately, Hiro replied with a shrug. I'm sure that's healthy, Disgust commented. As the other spoke, Tip glanced around before noticing something. Hey, Tip said as she leaned down and pulled a yellow envelope out of the wastebasket underneath Hiro's desk. Isn't this your acceptance letter? Oh my. Well, this is gonna get a bit loud, so I do apologize to everyone in the vicinity I am currently walking by, and to those who are listening with headphones. Turn down the volume if you can. I'll try not to make it as loud as the previous recording, okay? Okay. Riley looked at Tip in surprise as she held up the letter in question before turning her gaze towards Hiro, who was pointedly not looking at Tip or the letter. Why was that in the trash, Hiro? Riley questioned in confusion. It doesn't matter, Hiro replied with a shrug. Oh, no, he didn't, Anger questioned. It doesn't matter? Riley asked, looking even more befuddled than she had before. Hiro, you were dying to get in this fit. Why are you throwing out your invitation? It's grief. It's grief. I know it has it has a lot to do with grief, actually. Because I don't want to go anymore, Riley, Hiro answered as he turned to look at her, his rising anger apparent even if she couldn't sense his emotions. Don't want to? Riley questioned further, her brow furrowing dangerously. As she watched the exchange, Tip suddenly felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand on edge, and she unconsciously took a step away from Riley. It was a dumb idea, Hiro replied with a dismissive shrug as he began to stand up. It was all Tadashi's idea. I never really wanted to— Alright, that's it! Anger snarled. Don't lie to me! Riley suddenly shouted, her expression turning furious. I literally know what you're thinking! Don't treat me like I'm stupid, Hiro! As Riley shouted, a sudden wave of pressure seemed to surge from the young girl and slam into the others. As it did, a feeling of fiery anger suddenly burned through their minds. The sudden pain in her head caused Tip to grip the sides of her skull while curling up on herself. Hiro, on the other hand, stumbled away from Riley until he reached his bed and tumbled backwards over it, before he rolled onto the other side, landing on the floor with a thud. As she saw Hiro disappear behind his bed, Riley's anger suddenly left her and she let out a shocked gasp while covering her mouth. Oh, great. Well done, Hiro. Look what you just did. You've turned Riley into the Phoenix. What was that? Joy questioned in Shark. Apparently, Hiro wanted Riley to do the inside-out version of Dark Phoenix before it even hit theaters. No, I'm just kidding. It's a new empathy power from Anger. Wow. I don't know, Anger replied wearily. But I think I need to go lay down for a second. Oh my god! Riley said as she rapidly glanced between Tip and Hiro. Are you guys okay? Yeah, I think so, Tip replied as she stood up straight again, rubbing her temples as she did. What the hell was that? I think that it's something that started developing right before everything happened, Riley explained hesitantly. I'm trying to get control of it. I'm so sorry. I'm fine, Tip insisted as she glanced over at Hiro's bed. You should probably go check on him, though. Nodding in reply, Riley moved over to Hiro, who was in the process of pulling himself back up onto his bed. Are you okay, Hiro? Riley questioned as the young man pushed himself into a seated position on the edge of his bed. I think I bumped my head a little, Hiro answered as he gingerly touched the back of his skull before letting out a hiss of pain. Ow! As Hiro finished speaking, a high-pitched beep came from the direction of Tadashi's bed, followed by the sound of something being inflated. A few moments later, Baymax rose into view, his black eyes blinking as he finished inflating. Hi, Baymax. How you doing? It's been a long time, hasn't it? There was a long, quiet moment as Hiro, Riley, and Tip looked at Baymax in surprise. Baymax, for his part, glanced down at where he stood, wedged in the small space between Tadashi's bed and the wall. Taking a moment to glance to either side, Baymax began to awkwardly shuffle step his way around the bed, his vinyl skin squeaking loudly as he did. Eventually, he made it around the bed, knocking a small stack of books off the table as he went, and paused to glance back at the space he had just emerged from before turning his attention towards Hiro, Tip, and Riley. Hiro, Riley, and Tip. Sorry. And I'm sorry about the dog barking as we walk by. I can't control that. Hello, Baymax greeted them as he gave a strange circular wave. I am Baymax, your personal healthcare companion. Oh, hey Baymax, Hiro replied after getting over his surprise. I didn't know you were still active. I heard a sound of distress, Baymax explained as he cocked his head at the side. What seems to be the trouble? Oh, I just hit my head a little, Hiro answered, rubbing the back of his head for emphasis. I'm fine. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your pain? Baymax questioned as he began displaying a cartoony-looking pain chart on his chest. 0, Hiro replied with a shrug as he stood up from his bed. I'm okay, really. You can shrink back down now. Does it hurt when I touch it? Baymax inquired as he reached toward Hiro's head. That's okay, no touching, Hiro said as he stopped Baymax from touching him and gently pushed the robot back. He's only trying to help, Riley pointed out. I don't need his help, Hiro replied, glancing over at Riley and narrowing his eyes slightly. His or anyone else's. Yeah, sure, Tip stated with a snort of derision. Look, Hiro began to argue, but stopped when he noticed Baymax trying to touch his head again. Stop that! Please, allow me to examine your injury, Baymax stated as he continued trying to touch Hiro's head. Backpedaling away from Baymax, Hiro tried to keep the robot away from him, only to trip over a toolbox he left on the floor and tumble backwards, falling in a heap in the small space between his desk and his bed in an uncomfortable tangle of limbs. Ow, Hiro groaned. Oh, jeez, Hiro, are you okay? Riley exclaimed as she and Tip rushed over to the young man's side. You have fallen, Baymax observed as he walked up behind the girls and leaned over them. You think? Hiro questioned, a note of hostility in his voice as he began reaching around for something to grab onto. Here, Riley said as she stepped forward to offer Hiro her hand. I'm fine, Hiro replied, ignoring her hand as he grabbed hold of a shelf above his desk. I don't need your help. You know, this guy is starting to rub me the wrong way, anger grumbled while Riley narrowed her eyes at Hiro. As Hiro tried to pull himself up, the support holding the shelf up suddenly broke under his weight, dumping its contents, a collection of action figures, directly onto Hiro, who let out a yelp of pain. There was a pause as Riley and Tip looked down at Hiro in shock, Wallanger let out a barking laugh of amusement. On a scale of 1 to 10, on a scale of on a scale on a skip on a on a scale of 1 to 10, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your pain? Baymax questioned obliviously. 0, Hiro growled from underneath the heap of action figures. I just did that bit because it wasn't in the fanfic itself, but the big Hero 6 movie where the figures just fall on the hero one at a time, and every time one hits him, Baymax just restarts his 1 to 10 scale thing, and then it keeps going until the last one falls on him. It is alright to cry, Baymax said as he stepped past Riley and Tip before bending down and picking Hiro up bridal style despite the boy's protests. Crying is a natural response to pain. I'm not crying, Hiro replied as he quickly pushed himself out of Baymax's arms. Shooting Tip a glare, she suppressed a snicker. I will scan you for injuries, Baymax declared. Don't scan me, Hiro replied as he pointed up at Baymax. Scan complete, Baymax stated as he looked Hiro up and down with a glance. Unbelievable, Hiro sighed as he threw his hands into the air in defeat. You have sustained no injuries, Baymax announced, holding one finger in the air as he spoke. However, your hormone and neurotransmitter levels indicate that you are experiencing mood swings common in adolescence. Diagnosis? Puberty. Whoa, what? Hiro responded as Tip let out another barely suppressed snort of amusement. Okay, I think it's time for you to shrink now. You should expect an increase in body hair, Baymax continued as Hiro walked over to where the robot's case sat and picked it up. The cartoon image of a man appearing on his chest with areas of body hair growth marked. Especially on your face, chest, armpits, and... Thank you! Hiro interrupted as he placed the case down in front of Baymax before he pulled the robot towards it. That's enough. You may also experience strange and powerful new urges, Baymax went on, unperturbed as Hiro tried to stuff him back into the case. Many relating to the opposite sex. There was an awkward pause as Hiro stopped what he was doing and looked over at the girls, locking eyes with Riley as he did. After a moment, the two abruptly looked away from one another, their faces bright red. Tip, for her part, let out a short bark of laughter. Okay, Hiro declared far too loudly as he resumed trying to force Baymax back into his case. Let's get you back in your luggage. I cannot deactivate until you say you are satisfied with your care, Baymax explained as Hiro pushed him down to half his usual height, his sides bulging from the compressed air within him. Fine, Hiro growled as he lay on top of Baymax's compressed form, pushing down on the robot with all his strength. I'm satisfied with my whoa! Before Hiro could finish, Baymax in his case suddenly slid out from underneath them, causing Hiro to land on the floor, flat on his face. Graceful, Disgust snarked. You okay, Hiro? Riley asked with concern. Yeah, I'm fine. Hiro trailed off as he looked at something under his bed in confusion. What's wrong? Tip asked as she noticed Hiro's expression. Ignoring her, Hiro crawled across the floor and reached under his bed, pulling out one of his hoodies as he did. Holding it up, Hiro reached into the hoodie's pocket and pulled out a lone microbot, which thrashed about in his palm like a disoriented insect. Is that a microbot? Riley questioned as she narrowed her eyes at what Hiro was holding. Yeah, Hiro confirmed with a nod of his head, his expression turning pensive. It doesn't make any sense. Puberty can be a confusing time for a young adolescent flowering into manhood, Baymax stated. Really, Baymax? Really, really, really? Really, 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 really? Really, 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 really? No, that's not it, Hiro replied with a dismissive wave of his hand, as he turned towards his desk and placed the microbot in a petri dish, watching as it rolled around and tried to force its way free. This thing is attached to the other microbots. But that's impossible, Riley commented. They were all destroyed in the fire. Riley, I get the feeling that you may have accidentally tread on broken glass there. Bringing up something like that, it's understandable, but in front of Hiro, you're gonna cause him even more pain than he's already suffering now. It's not a big deal, Hiro stated with a shrug as he stepped away from his desk. Dumb thing must be broken. Anyway, Tip spoke up as she crossed her hands over her chest. Like we were saying, you can't stay in here forever, Hiro. You sure? Hiro questioned with a snort as he sat on his bed. I don't see any reason why I need to leave. What's for me out there? Hiro, I understand that you are grieving over Tadashi. I personally... I lost a mom. My mom. But I did go through grief, and at the moment, I am currently moving on with my life, along with the rest of my loved ones, like my brother and my dad. So I know what you're going through, but do you really have to go and say that? Especially in front of Riley, you know, your girlfriend. Dude, really? I do not like this attitude of yours. It's understandable, but plain wrong. That jerk! Disgust declared as the other emotions gasped in shock. You and me both, Disgust. You and me both. A pained expression crossed Riley's face as Tip glanced between her and Hiro. While the others talked, Baymax wandered over to the petri dish, leaning down to examine it curiously. Reaching down, Baymax picked the dish up with both hands and held it up to get a better look at it. Maybe he doesn't mean it? Joyce replied hopefully. You don't mean that, Riley said quietly, looking at the floor as she spoke. I know personally that he doesn't mean it, but he shouldn't have said it. I get that he's in pain, but does he have to put his pain on others? Especially since he wasn't there for Riley. What gives him the right... I'm trying not to be so harsh in it, but seriously, low move. Low move, bro. Hiro looked at her for a few moments before he sighed and turned away. Look, it's not that I don't care, Hiro explained. What are you so afraid of? Riley questioned, raising her head to look Hiro in the eye. As the others continued to talk, Baymax began to turn in a circle, noting that the microbot kept changing the direction it attempted to go in every time he moved. I'm not afraid of anything, Hiro replied, his eyes narrowing in reply. Liar, anger snarled. What did I tell you about lying to me? Riley practically growled, her eyes narrowing. I can feel your fear. Well, maybe you should stay out of my head, Hiro snapped in return. Oh God. Your tiny robot is trying to go somewhere, Baymax observed as he looked over at Hiro and the girls obliviously. Then why don't you go find out where it's trying to go? Hiro barked at Baymax. You want to help me so much, then get out of here. Don't yell at him. He's just trying to help, Riley snapped, bringing Hiro's attention back to her. Just like we are! Guys? Tip said as she watched Baymax promptly leave the room. I didn't ask for your help, Hiro shouted. Guys, Tip repeated as she walked over to the stairs and looked down them. Fine, Hiro, Riley all but screamed. If you want to stay up here by yourself so much, maybe we'll just leave you up here to starve. Guys, Tip shouted. What? They shouted back in tandem as they spun to face her. In case you two didn't notice, Baymax just wandered out the front door, Tip replied, her sentence punctuated by the sound of the bell above the cafe door jingling from downstairs. Uh-oh, Fear whispered. Hiro and Riley stared at Tip in shock before the sounds of tires screeching and horns blaring cut through the air. Looking at each other in panic, the three quickly ran over to one of the windows and opened the shades to look out. Watching with wide eyes, the trio observed Baymax as he walked directly through the intersection outside the cafe, oblivious to the cars screeching to a halt around him as he kept his gaze focused on the petri dish in his hands. What? Hiro shouted before quickly spinning around, the girls following his lead as he began scrambling around looking for his shoes and sweatshirt. Well, Hiro, it's your fault for telling him to leave in the first place. Grief? I know you're in the anger stage of grief, but Jesus Christ! Why do you need to be so abrasive? We have to go after him, Tip declared as Hiro pulled on one of his shoes. Where's my other shoe? Hiro shouted as he desperately reached around for it. Here, Riley called as she tossed the shoe at Hiro, who flipped the catch, allowing the shoe to hit him in the face. Ooh! What's there to say that Riley didn't throw the shoe at Hiro on purpose? Pardon me. Hiro let out a yelp of pain as it struck him before he quickly picked it up and pardon me again. It slipped the shoe on before following the others as they were following the girls as they rushed down the stairs after Baymax. Oh, this couldn't possibly get any worse, Fear declared as they left. You and me both, Fear. If I keep flubbing my lines like this, I'm gonna be the worst reader in history. But don't worry, I'll get over it soon, hopefully. Right. Finmonster says, definitely an interesting chapter to write. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Well, that was definitely an explosive argument. So, Hiro and Riley had just had their first fight. I'm trying to lock a gate behind me. I'm sorry if you heard that. I'm still walking Lola, but I'm taking her home now. And Hiro, Riley, and Tip are now having to go after Baymax because Hiro was the one who forced him out. Well, he's following the petri dish, but you know where I'm going with this. So, I'll see you guys in the next chapter. Until then, I'm the Masked Ranger saying, recording for 2 chapters for tomorrow and Saturday. And hopefully, I won't be as late to record them all. Have a good night, everyone, and always remember, keep moving forward. Diablo Immortal Dark Side the 3. 2 videos from my favorite channels. 2 of the Material Grace and Watch Mojo, by the way. What, you don't expect me to keep watching brony channels, do you? I love brony channels, like Firebrand and Dr. Wolf and stuff, but there are also other channels that I like to watch, you know, just to keep things more diverse, Okay, I'm stopping, bye.